This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with RotaCloud, the people management platform for shift-based teams. RotaCloud lets managers create and share rotas, record annual leave, and process timesheets in minutes, all from a single web-based app. It makes communicating with your team a doddle, letting your staff check their rotas, receive updates and alerts about their shifts, and even clock in and out using the RotaCloud mobile app. Head over to rotacloud.com/Phil to start your 30-day free trial and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Rosa Brough, founder of 750, the hospitality film and media gurus. Coming up on today's show, Rosa gives us a saying for the ages:
go full skinny dipping or don't go swimming at all.
After 150 episodes, the police finally catch up with Phil.
About 10 years ago, probably now.
And Rosa describes an everyday occurrence in filming.
And the hairy bikers are driving through the drive-thru dressed as a hairy chicken and a giant egg.
All that and so much more as Rosa chats us through her brilliant story to date. Rosa was another of those amazing people I met at HRC earlier this year, where I had the opportunity to collaborate with her and her team. What she's doing highlights yet another career available within the world of hospitality, and maybe even something you hadn't considered. She's an absolute livewire throughout our chat, and I'm very grateful for her sharing her story. One final thing before we get into it, and I know I go on about this, but if you can take 2 secs to subscribe to the show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, it really makes a huge difference. Enjoy. And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Rosa Brough.
Hello.
Rosa.
Hello, how are you?
I'm alright, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Excited to chat.
Yeah, indeed. Well, for context, who are you and what do you do?
It's a big question, isn't it? So I run 750, which is a independent video production company that specialises in making content for the hospitality industry. So films, photography for restaurants, chefs and everything in between. So if we've been going about 2 years, we're quite young, but before that I worked in TV. So I was a TV producer for about 13 years, making cookery shows mostly for the BBC. So like
Yes.
Tom Kerridge and Nadia Hussain, Hairy Bikers, all of that kind of stuff. So
wicked. Well,
yeah.
we'll definitely get into all of that. But I just, this is the one thing, well, it's one of the many things actually that I love about the industry that we work in, is that the one, it puts you in front of people that you, like, I would never have expected to have had any dealings with you in my life. And then we meet at HRC a few weeks ago, which was awesome, a great experience. And it just dawned on me as well that, look, here's another example of something that you can do in hospitality.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the things I always say through like our work with Choose Hospitality and other campaigns is there isn't a job in hospitality that doesn't exist. Like whatever you do, whatever your skill set, whatever area you want to work in, the great thing about hospitality is it's everything. So
yeah.
When people ask me what industry do you work in, I say hospitality. I don't say media or film production because, to be honest, I don't really like the connotations that are associated with, oh, I work in media.
Right.
So I say hospitality because I am in the industry all the time. It's just, I just make films and take photos of hospitality, but
yeah.
I'm in it. So
yeah, you totally are. I mean, the like connotations of media, is it the same as I'm going for a gap year? Is it?
Yeah, I sort of feel like, unfortunately, there is a bit, I think it's got worse in like the world of content creation, which I also hate, and I'm using air quotes for that, is that...
Well, I'm creating content. What are you saying?
Well, exactly. No, content creation is great, but I do think there is, like, I went to university, I studied journalism, that's how I started. I always wanted to interview people. That was what I wanted to do. I just wanted to get out and talk to people. And so I studied at A-level and diploma and degree level, journalism and politics and interviewing and news, basically, is what my foundations are in. That's what I'm trained in. And that's then what has led me to my career and what I'm doing now. But I think, I don't know, there are a lot of people, I think it's the same with any industry, where, and I'll get slapped on the wrist for saying this, but I sort of don't really care, is just because you're running around with a camera and you're working media, everyone thinks it's really glamorous and it's not hard work and you can just take like photos or you can just film something and put it out, and there's no skill in it, and there's no like, I don't know. My other half, okay, this is a good example. My other half is Indian, and he won't mind me saying this, and they won't mind saying this, but traditionally within Indian tradition, jobs that count as careers are academic, scientists, doctors, all of that kind of stuff. And it's the same with hospitality, and I think it's the same as media. It's when we first met, it was kind of like, oh, you work in media, that's not a proper job. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And so I think there's two sides to it, in the same as there is with hospitality. There's a lot of people that just do it because it's kind of cool and they can just do it. And there are elements of it it's quite easy, where it's like, oh, okay, I'll just go work in a bar until I work out what I'm going to do with my life. But then the other half of it is actually a career and something that you do properly. And when it's done properly, it's great. But unfortunately, there is a lot of times where it's not done properly. And I think because it's so, now with everyone having photos and cameras on their phones and everyone makes content, I think it's even harder to go, well, this is actually, I've been doing this for 15 years. I kind of know how to do it, and it's a skill and a profession. It's not just something that you can just go, oh, well, I just pick up a camera and I work in media now. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
sort of went
Yeah.
off on a
Yeah.
bit of a tangent there, but
No, 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 no. I get you 100%. And yeah, I mean, even from the perspective of starting this humble little show, I wanted to make sure one of the first things that I read about how to start a podcast was you have to make sure that the audio quality is good, because nobody will listen if the audio quality is bad. And so it comes down to then, okay, so how do you then make that happen? It's not just a case of using the microphone that's in your laptop as an example. I have a little microphone here. So, and even then, I'm like scratching about 5% of the skill level that's involved in creating something like this. And all I strive to do is just to make every day a little bit better than yesterday. That's pretty much it.
And I think that's what I think it's partly, and I will probably talk about this quite a lot in this podcast, but the similarities between television production, media production, and hospitality are very similar. There is a lot of things that are the same. And I think one of those things is the fact of the perceptions of it as a career and a profession and as an industry. It's not an academic subject, it's not life threatening, it's not saving lives, it's not doctors and nurses and teachers and scientists and all of those proper jobs. But the fact that I have to do that because I feel like media and hospitality, that's exactly what's wrong with why we've got this massive staffing crisis in hospitality, because a lot of people don't take it seriously as a job. And I think it's the same for media. I think it's a lot of people do it for a bit and go, okay, that's kind of cool, and want to do it because they want to be seen to be going to nice places and taking cool photos and stuff. But then actually it's not taken seriously. And that, I think that's something I struggle with. And I sort of, if ever anyone says to me, I want to get into TV or I want to get into film or I want to do this in media, and what should I do? I say, absolutely do not go to university and study media production. Just don't do it, because all the skills that you need, people skills, listening, storytelling, all of that comes through life and life experience. And do something like English or history or geography or science or something that you're interested in, because anything can then, everything else I can teach you to pick up a camera or how to use it or whatever. Don't spend 3 years learning how to make a film, because I just think it's the wrong thing to be doing. That doesn't give you the reason why. The good people that are really good at it are people that are good at life. I think then just being able to record it is then a separate thing. Does that make sense? I don't think that really makes sense.
No, I get you. It's almost like go and get yourself the practical experience, which is way more important than any theoretical experience you'll learn in a classroom.
Yeah, and I think you can do, there's so many brilliant, and actually I was just talking about one this morning with a colleague, that there's so many great short courses that will teach you how to use software, will teach you the technical things of a camera. That stuff can be learned easily, but that should not be overlooked as a priority, as like listening to people and engaging with people and being able to pick up the phone and talk to someone and ask them the right questions and get the information that you want and create something that is interesting to somebody else. I think that is not something that you learn by playing around with a camera. Like that's the kind of part two. Part one is getting out there and putting yourself in situations with people, and then think about the technicalities of it.
Yeah. God, we got straight into this, didn't we? Really?
I know, and it's sort of one of my niggly things. I never really like. I'm quite opinionated. Sorry about it, but I think I'm allowed to be. I think I've been doing it a long time. I feel like now I'm allowed to. Say, I think not enough people are honest as well, which
Yeah.
is something
No,
I'll
no.
come on to later. But you kind of just got to say it because that's what I think. I've been doing it a long time. That's what I would say to people. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't really care. I just think that's
Yeah,
what
but
I think.
it's what's true to you, right? That's the most important thing. Is that, and that's something that you
Yeah,
deeply care about. You care about your
yeah,
craft, and you care about what and why you're doing
yeah.
something,
There's
and that
an
comes across.
there's an amazing. This is the last thing I'll say about it. Then we can move on. But there's an amazing clip of
Haven't even got
someone
into
on
your
YouTube.
story yet.
There's an amazing clip of YouTube of someone there's all these like reviews of like camera kit and this lens and this camera, blah blah blah. And there was an amazing guy that just said, there is no point where it is ever acceptable for the size of the lens, the price of the camera, the high techness of your equipment becomes more important than the subject matter of what you're filming and what the person in front of you is saying. And I think that is fundamentally what needs to be remembered in this kind of industry of film and TV and making content. It's like you can get so carried away now. Technology is amazing, and there's like technology has come so far since I was at university and we were filming everything on tapes, and
Yeah.
like having to cut all of that kind of stuff. And it's amazing and 4K and all of this stuff. But I think it's very easy when people are looking at things and everything is on first impression, everything is on the first 5 seconds, everything is what things look like. It's very easy to think that it is way more important to think how something looks and what equipment you've used to film it than it is to actually who you're filming and what they're saying and why they're saying it. And I think that I say to my team is like, I almost, I would, don't care if you go out and shoot it on your phone. If it's in the moment and someone's doing something that is really important and really interesting, film it on your phone because I care so much more about what it is that you're actually filming than how you're filming it. And I think
Mhm.
you can get carried away with tech and kit because it creates the impression that you're doing a bigger and better job than you actually are.
No,
There you go.
I think that's a very interesting perspective because I've been taught all the way through is like get the kit, and I actually do have the kit.
Yeah.
I've got kit that I can go out and about with and all of that, and it does make it definitely makes a difference from a microphone perspective, that you
Yeah.
have a good microphone, for
Yeah.
sound quality purposes. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, I kind of get it. Like
Yeah.
even I suppose even then, even if you've got the best microphone in the world and your sound quality is crystal clear, if what's being said or what's being heard is completely inane and irrelevant and not interesting, then who cares about the quality of your microphone?
Exactly. And I think, yes, okay, there is, I mean, obviously there is kit that I like and I think is really good and I think it's important to have the right equipment to be able to do things. But it's the same as like when I was setting up the business and there's this thing called like the lean startup. And it's like, well, actually, what is the very basics of what you need to do a good job? And then work with that. And then you can think about kind of getting better and get moving into all of these kind of stuff. Don't start with the Ferrari if you can't drive a Golf. Like you've got to be able to do the very basics with, you've got to be able to do a good job with shit tech and then you can do a really amazing job with great tech. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it totally does. Yeah. And that's a saying that will definitely go on a t-shirt. Don't drive a Ferrari if you can't drive a Golf.
Well, I was trying to think of a real, like, a Golf isn't even a bad car. I was trying to
Yeah.
think of a car. I know nothing about cars. Sorry,
We
that's
get the point.
terrible.
We get the point. Yes. Anyway, right.
Anyway, you ask the questions now.
It's very, it's very useful to get that perspective though, because like anybody who's listening to this, who's contemplating a career in any kind of production,
Yeah,
hopefully has taken some pointers from this because maybe you have, like I have, I totally have bought into the tech that you need to make a podcast happen. But the reality is you don't need the tech. You need good guests. You need good conversation. You need all of these things. That's the thing that's actually really more important. This is like a
And
therapy
I think
session now for me.
I know. I'm sorry. I feel like
Sorry.
yeah. I don't want to be downtrodden, and I think there is a time and a place, absolutely, for making things look the most amazing. But in our everyday lives, we're not trying to make blockbuster films with stuff we're putting on Instagram. Let's be honest. We just want people to engage with it and know more about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think it's more about the energy and the money that you spend getting hung up on that kind of stuff, which actually it doesn't really matter, really.
Yeah.
As long as you can see it and hear it, I think it's fine.
Yeah. Let's park that phase. That's phase one, we'll call. Let's go back to you mentioned that you studied journalism, and so what after that? What happened next? What was there a moment where you started to feel like, right, I know what I want to do now? Had that come yet, or did you still have to kind of go out there and find that?
Sort of. I mean, so when I was younger, in my teenage years, up until up until university, maybe before, I was always like obsessed with like newspapers and the radio and interviews, and I sort of knew I wanted to get into journalism, and then I studied broadcast journalism, like I said, but it was very news heavy. So we did like a news broadcast every day, and we had to go out and make news segments and film like things about, you know, when you see those headlines on the side of a corner shop of local bin lorry crashed into whatever, I don't know, like silly little stories. But we had to go out and film like 5, 6 of those a day and turn them around. And I was like, well, this is great, but I sort of feel like I want to do something where I've got more time. I didn't, and it's funny, it's kind of all come back around. But as part of my degree, we had to do work experience. And I thought, well, we had an amazing studio at university. I went to Nottingham Trent and it was brilliant. I had the best time. We had a fully fledged news suite, TV studio. So I felt like I didn't really want to go and do news, but I just wanted to go and do something in that area. And we had to do work experience. So I just sent out loads of letters to TV production companies because I wanted to get into like investigative journalism, like really long, deep, dark journalism.
Right.
This was after I went through a phase of wanting to be a war reporter, which drove my mum mental. And so I watched documentaries, and then I watched the credits, and I waited until the end, and it came up with the production company logo of who made it. And I made a list of all these companies that made the programs that I liked. And then I just emailed them and I said, look, can I come and do some work experience? And I spent a summer doing work experience at all these different production companies. But one of the best bits of advice that was ever given to me, and I say to people, is even though you know what you think you want to do, try and do loads of different things around it, because it will all benefit what you want to do. Like I wanted to do journalism and documentaries. That's what I wanted to do. But I did work experience in all aspects of television. So I did singing competitions, antique shows, cooking shows. I just spent like a summer working on any TV show because I didn't really know what else existed about outside of documentary. I just wanted to do documentary. And then I started seeing the world outside of serious journalism and saw like features and factual entertainment programs. And I was like, oh, actually, TV production is kind of fun because I'm still meeting people. We're still telling stories and we're still doing things, but it's a bit less serious and and it still kind of takes me to all these kind of places. So I sort of kind of then thought, oh, TV production is quite cool. Maybe I'll go down that. And I got offered an internship from one of the work experience placements that I did at RDF Television in London. And I literally had my first day after my last exam at university, and then I was thrust into the TV world, and that was it. And I was there for a couple of years working as a runner, doing every kind of show. Like I said, singing competitions, antique shows, and I just loved the buzz of it and the people and it's the variety is the spice of life, as they say. Like I just loved not knowing where I was going to go. Like one minute I was driving a brand new BMW that was given to us for the shoot with Katie Piper in the back, really needing a wee. on the way back from a shoot and had to pull over like on the motorway just so she could go wee in a bush. And then the next I'm in a studio with Keith Lemon and Stacey Solomon doing a singing competition. And then the next I'm in a field making giant food. Like it was just so varied that it just kept me interested. And I think I know that is one of my traits, that I never like knowing what's going to happen, really. I like the element of surprise in my life. Like if you were to say to me what's happening in 3 months' time, I literally have no idea. I think like a month ahead max, really, which is terrible for business, as I've learned. But I just liked the idea that you didn't know who you were going to meet and what you were going to be doing, and that's what TV production was like when I was started out, and it just made me so excited. And I never then decided to like categorize myself of I want to make documentaries, or I want to make wildlife programs, or I want to make antique shows. I just made shows because I just felt like every show that I did, I learnt something or met someone that I didn't know before or hadn't thought about before. So it was just kind of felt like I was just soaking up all of this stuff, really. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I'd been doing it about 7, 8 years that I got into food, really. Before then, I was
Right.
just doing everything.
I suppose that, but that's it makes total sense because, and just to clarify, the job of a runner kind of is exactly what it says on the tin. You basically run around doing everything that people need you to do.
Yeah. And I loved it because it's kind of like you've got no responsibility really, but you're just in the right place. And someone used to say to me, because in the beginning I was just making tea, and I remember after the first week, phoned my mum and I was like, Mum, this isn't for me. Like I'm literally just making tea and going around and handing out the post. That's literally what I did.
Right.
And then she was like, yeah, but who are you making tea for? And who are you handing the post to? And I was like, oh, actually, well, yeah, I could be making tea in Costa for everyday members of the public who I'm never going to meet again, or I'm making tea for directors and producers who are the people that I want to be like when I grow up. And I was like, actually, if I'm going to make tea somewhere, I want to make it here. And then after that, I was like happy to do anything as one of my, like, I would just do anything. I just go, yeah, cool, drive in. So as a runner, your main thing is you're just supporting the production. So you are making tea, going out, getting lunch, driving, helping like carry and move around kit. Like you could be anything. So you kind of get like a bit of everything, and you literally do just run around. And I think as long as you smile and say yes and don't be grumpy, you'll end up getting really far. It was the best when you're those early days when you're just like learning it all. I loved it. I loved it so much.
Yeah. You've been wide-eyed.
Yeah, apart from the responsibility of driving big, brand new, scary cars around central London was pretty scary. But other than that, you
Right.
just got to get over it eventually.
So you got the interest in food. Where did that? Was there a specific moment where that just kind of sparked in your head?
Yeah, and I think he might listen to this. I do have to credit my old housemate who I lived with in London, who also worked in TV and started out as a runner with me at this internship called Ewan. But I was lucky. My mum always cooked. I loved cooking and always been interested in it. I'd grown up very luckily around homemade food all the time. And I loved seeing my mum cook and had helped her and sort of had an interest in it. When I sort of got back into cooking myself when I was living in London, and it was my housemate Ewan who kind of went, like, we just got into cooking together. And it was Jamie Oliver's 30-minute meals, which make, because I was like working crazy hours as a runner. I wanted to get back into cooking. I didn't have much money, but actually I got given that book and I thought, okay, cool, I'm just going to start cooking. And it just got me really into cooking again. And I was still doing like other normal shows and just like cooking. And then I sort of thought, well, there's kind of food shows that I could do. So what if I combined the two? Like I'm working in food, that would be quite cool. And I started looking at jobs that were in food TV. And the first one I did was Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares,
Oh, nice. God.
and it which kind of threw me in at the deep end. So I did that, and then that was from then. I just ended up then doing food shows after that, and I was like, this is great because the subject matter it was always good. Like I liked working on antique shows and all that kind of stuff because I felt like I was learning about something new. But then as soon as you go on to the next job, Like did a whole thing about taxidermy where I had to learn everything about taxidermy. And at the time, I was an expert on taxidermy. But if you asked me a year later anything about taxidermy, I've literally pushed it out my brain, gone on to the next
Yeah.
thing. Whereas with food, because it was,
As you should. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Whereas with food, it kind of, because I was doing it at home and I was genuinely interested in it, it just felt like the more I did it, not the easier it got, but the deeper I got into the kind of food TV world, and it just snowballed from there, really.
Yeah. Okay. So, Kitchen Nightmares.
Yeah,
Just talk as I suppose that's your maybe the first big break when it comes to food shows. How
absolutely.
did it progress from there?
So, Kitchen Nightmares at the time was made by a production company called One Potato, Two Potato, which was Gordon had an involvement in, but they were an arm of Optimum Television, which was the company that discovered Jamie Oliver, and so they did a lot of kind of food shows, and they are the company that make Great British Menu.
Right.
So after I did Kitchen Nightmares, I was in the office around the time that they were then starting the next series of Great British Menu. So then I went from Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares to Great British Menu, and then that was obviously like, and it still is one of the best highly regarded food shows that there is. So
Oh,
I then got thrown
it's
straight into it.
for me as a foodie, it's the greatest television program that exists.
Mm, yeah,
I love watching these guys do their thing. You know, just be creative against a brief, and when they pull it off to a level that you can't even comprehend. And I've actually just
mm,
lucky enough, only last week I had a chat with Adam Handling, who was obviously this year's, sorry, spoiler alert, champion of
superstar.
champions.
Yeah,
And for somebody who's interested in food, like there is no reason not to watch that program. Like
no,
it's just really interesting from start to finish. So I can't even comprehend. It'd be a nightmare behind the scenes, probably.
yeah. I mean, the only reason to not watch it is when you've made a couple of series of it, like me, and you just can't bear to watch it anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I mean, that was series 10 that the first time I did it. And what are we on, like series 19 now? And I
I don't
think
know.
at the time, before there might be young listeners to this that can't imagine a world without social media, and Instagram wasn't really a thing, Facebook wasn't really a thing, mobile phones with cameras weren't really a thing. So the only way that you could really see chefs of that caliber cooking the way that they do was on that show, because you didn't
Yeah.
see them in their restaurants plating up dishes on their Instagram page. You didn't see videos on YouTube of what they were doing. It genuinely was a shop window into the world of fine dining chefing. Like, that is the only time you would see the processes. And I remember my job was the food researcher. So it was literally my job to direct contact to all of the chefs, get all of their recipes for every dish that they were doing, and then kind of break them down and highlight the points of each recipe that were going to be interesting for the director. And I remember getting some of these recipes through, and the terminology on them and the processes, I had no idea. So I've got my big like food thesaurus and all of that. I just had to learn all of this kind of stuff. Of At the time, it was kind of quite molecular as well, like all the equipment they were using, because they'd send their kit list and then the techniques. And you imagine like each recipe has got like 20 elements, some of them, and that they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing that. And it was my job to kind of dissect that and go, okay, we can't, in a 30-minute program, you can't talk about every single thing. So what are the interesting bits? And I had to quite quickly learn everything about cooking at that level. And I think that really helped me and gave me a good foundation to then understanding that world. And I think it is, food media production is one of those things where I think you do have to have a bit of an understanding about it to kind of be able to really share what it is that you're filming or whatever. There's kind of like, you can go to a restaurant and make a little film about the dining experience, which is very popular now, kind of a customer point of view. But to take what the chefs or restaurants are doing and then project it to an audience that doesn't really understand that kind of world, I think you do have to have an understanding of it, in the same way that
Mm.
wildlife programming, like the people that make David Attenborough's programs, they are highly skilled wildlife broadcasters because their knowledge about biology and science and wildlife and animals is second to none. Like, you can't make those programs if you don't understand how ants move because you're filming them for whatever. And I think it's the same of, you can't really film a process in a kitchen unless you really understand what the process is, because you got to be quick, because they don't wait for you. So you
No.
kind of got to preempt it. And I think that's what then, because I had done something like that, it then opened the doors to every other kind of food show, because it was so highly regarded and such a level that I could then quite easily go and work on Nadia's family favourites or chicken and egg with the hairy bikers, because I thought I just got it and I loved it. So I soaked it up like a bloody sponge, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who were the chefs when you first hit the Great British Menu scene?
So
Just to kind
the
of,
chefs,
because this will date it perfectly.
yeah, so it was, I was actually with one of them yesterday. So Josh Eggleton from Bristol, Richard Bainbridge from Norfolk. It was Michael O'Hare, who's now a judge. It was his first time on the
All
series.
right, yeah, God, I remember that year. Yeah.
It was, oh my gosh, Matt Gillen, Pip Lacey. I can't even remember. Kind of like, yeah, proper old school chefs. Matt Warswick, who's now in Barbados doing stuff. But yeah, I think the one that, because of the one that you sort of see all the time, yeah, it was the first time Michael O'Hare had done telly. And that was, yeah, so it was series 10. It was the Women's Institute series, which was great.
Right.
So
Yeah.
about 10 years ago, probably now.
But it's also, from a shop window perspective for these chefs, it's an incredible show because, and that was my ignorance at the time, but I hadn't heard of Michael O'Hare at that time.
No.
And then he came on with his very unique brand of cooking. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I have to go and eat in his restaurant. God, that looks insane.
Well, I think people forget that Tom Kerridge, Paul Ainsworth, Richard Corrigan, all of these chefs that are such household names now, they started TV life on Great British Menu. That's how it started for them. So there's a reason, there's a reason why it's a bit of an institution. There's a reason why chefs want to do it, because it does get you out there to a world that might not know who you are.
Yeah, a proper platform for sure. So yeah, then that took you into other TV shows.
Oh, I did a few. The one that springs to mind was Nadia's family favourite. I can't remember now. I did quite a few in London, but then it was the thing that made me move to Bristol. I sort of got to a point where I was living in London at the time, and I just sort of felt like I didn't have any ties. I was sitting on the tube a lot. All of my friends were in different corners. I didn't really have a reason to be in London. And at the time, working in TV, the only other two places where there was an industry were Manchester or Bristol. And a lot of food programs came out of Bristol. So the Nigel Slater series, the Hairy Biker series, even the BBC food program, the radio series still comes out of Bristol. So Bristol was a bit of a food hub. So I thought, if I want to continue making food programs, I've got to go to Bristol. So I just legged it. I was standing on a street corner waiting for the bus, and I had a phone call from my exec from Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, and she said, I want you to come and work a year's contract, which in TV at the time was a long contract, on this show called First Dates. It's going to be amazing. And I just remember saying, I'm really sorry, but I've got to leave London and I've got to go to Bristol. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. I don't know anyone there. And even though you're offering me a year's contract on what now is an amazing show, I'm really sorry. I've just got to say no. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. But had I not done that, I then wouldn't have gone on to do all the amazing food shows and then started the company in the way that I did. So yeah, life crossroads moment for sure.
Yeah, and what level are you at this point, like in terms of how a production team works? Where are you in the grand scheme of things?
So when I moved to Bristol, I was an assistant producer. So you go runner, researcher, assistant producer, producer, director, series producer, exec producer. That's kind of the ladder. So I was kind of in the middle, but I'd been doing it a long time, about 7 years. I was a researcher for ages. I didn't want to step up. There was always kind of this pressure, and I think a lot of it now is you want the next job role, you want the next title, you want to step up the ladder. So a lot of my peers were becoming assistant producers ahead of me. And it was always, I mean, TV was incredibly competitive at the time, and it still is. But I always felt like there's this pressure for me to step up and become an assistant producer. But I loved being a researcher. It was kind of my favourite job role in TV because I sort of felt like I got to have all the fun without any of the real kind of responsibility. So I stayed a researcher for ages, and that's actually how I ended up getting the Gordon Ramsay show, because I was the most experienced researcher in the pool of researchers, because everyone else who had got my level of experience had gone up to assistant producer, and it wasn't an assistant producer role. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the job title. So the only reason I got into the industry was because I held my ground and I didn't give in to the pressure of wanting the job title and the money. I sort of knew that if I stayed a researcher for longer than everybody else, I then got to choose whatever job I wanted because I was a really experienced researcher. I wasn't a junior assistant producer. Does that make sense?
It totally does, yeah. And actually, there's a cracking career lesson for anybody listening at this point. In that, is like you don't need to be in a rush to get to where you're going. Actually, just take a moment and learn your craft to the best that you can.
Exactly.
And look at what can come.
And it goes back to my Ferrari and golf stupid anecdote that I said earlier. But I remember thinking when I got that Gordon Ramsay job, oh my God, like this is why I waited. Like I almost wanted to go 2 fingers up to everybody else that was kind of pressuring me, because I had been offered jobs as assistant producers, but they were jobs on shows that I just wasn't interested in, and I just wanted to do something that I wanted to do. And I remember being like, yeah, it's worked. Like this is why I've waited. Because then after that, that's when my career changed. And it was because I was patient, and I must have been 24 maybe at the time, 24, 25. And I just felt like I'm just kind of going to ignore everybody that's like wants to be a director by the time they're 28, because I just wanted to see what would come to me, and it worked. So yeah, wait, kids, don't rush.
Listen to your uncle. I was going to call you Uncle Rosa there. Sorry, Auntie Rosa. So just reel off some of the other shows that you and kind of the roles that you had within those shows.
Oh my God, I sort of should have my CV, because you know what, you forget. So you end up doing so many shows. So when I moved to Bristol, I had a brief hiatus from food, and I ended up doing a series called Medical Mysteries, which was about people who had weird medical conditions that were unsolved, which actually was really interesting, and I made some really good friends. And then I went and did a couple of Hairy Bikers shows. So I did Hairy Bikers Home Comforts, Hairy Bikers Chicken and Egg, where I did the America episode. So I ended up going around America with the Hairy Bikers, filming fried chicken and barbecue chicken and all this amazing stuff, which was great. It was one of the best jobs.
Hey everyone, so I just wanted to take a quick moment of your time to say that this podcast wouldn't be possible without the incredible people and brands that support it. And I'm proud to partner with RotaCloud, the people management app for hospitality teams. With thousands of customers worldwide, RotaCloud's simple, web-based tools are already helping businesses like yours save time and money every single day. It makes planning and sharing rotas easy, with work schedules sent straight to employees' phones and staff automatically notified if there's a change to their shifts. It also makes managing annual leave a breeze, with staff requesting time off directly through the RotaCloud mobile app. All you need to do is click approve or deny, and RotaCloud will take care of the rest. But don't just take my word for it. Visit rotacloud.com/Phil to try RotaCloud free for 30 days and see for yourself how much easier managing your team can be. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
A lot of Nadia's early series. And then, so at that time, I was kind of assistant producer. I got into producer world with Nadia, I think, when I was becoming more experienced. And then I started working on Tom Kerridge series. So I did Lose Weight, Get Fit, and I did some stuff, a thing with him for Marcus Rashford for Instagram. And this was when I was producer level, it was kind of like, okay, I sort of could pick and choose, and I kind of had a reputation. I mean, it is word of mouth, unfortunately. One of the things about the industry is I don't think I've ever had a real job interview in my life. I think I've just met for a coffee and gone, oh, this is this show. Do you want to do it? What's your CV? When can you start? It's never really like, I remember my other half talking about like, what are they called? Appraisals and end of contract things. So all of this kind of stuff in real business world. And I was like, I've never had any of that. I've never even had an interview. So I just kind of went from like job to job with people I knew, who I'd worked with, because everyone's freelance in TV. So everyone does a job. It's 3-4 months, a bit longer if you do the edit, and then you all leave and you all go somewhere else. So everyone kind of moves around. You don't just work for one production company. You don't just work for one. Well, in the day, this is what you did. And so everyone would kind of move around. So it was all about networking and who you worked with. And you always wanted to make a good impression. So then I'd go on like I'd get a call from a director of a series that I'd worked with on something else. And he was then doing something new. So can you come and do this with me? And then, so it all just kind of then, it spreads a bit like wildfire. And then when people are kind of crewing up for a job, you're kind of, there's names on the list that once you do those kind of shows, you then just end up being on the list for phone calls to then do those kind of shows, really.
Got you. So at what point were you starting to get a kind of sense in your head that I might want to go and do this on my own?
I sort of started to get to the point where I was quite senior. I felt like I'd been doing it for quite a long time. And there were certain people that I worked with and still do today who sort of, I felt like, trusted me to make decisions and kind of have some sort of creative line into what we do and why we do it. But there were some jobs where I felt like I was still, no matter how hard I worked or how experienced I was, I felt like I was always going to have someone else that was sitting in an office somewhere else dictating what I could and couldn't do.
Right.
And I think when you're working on things for big corporations like the BBC, and I loved working for BBC shows, it has so much kudos, there's so much things it brings you, and it's got such a thing about it, but also it's so dictated by red tape. There are lots of people sitting upstairs that kind of make the decisions. So your commissioners are the ones that make the decisions on what shows get made. So the things that you see on TV are decided by people, commissioners, going, yeah, let's make that show, or that's a good idea, let's make that or not make that. And then there's kind of executive producers or whatever. And I just sort of felt like I was working and working, and I wasn't getting the chance. And I could see things around me that I'd be like, oh, that would be really interesting to film, or people would love to know about that. Or I'd be having conversations like this, and I'd tell people about things I'd witnessed when I've been in kitchens or filming or whatever, that they would find really interesting. And I got frustrated with the fact that I would only ever get to make those things if these people that I've never met, who'd never met the people that I was talking about, got to decide whether or not we made a program about it. And it really started to bug me, because I was like, but people need to know about this, actually. And why should it be dictated by a small group of people? And there were sort of some decisions that got made in some programs that I was just like, oh, I don't think that's right. And I sort of felt like, well, maybe I kind of could start to just do things on my own. But it was a bit of an accident, really. I didn't really ever intend it to turn how it has. But I sort of felt like I knew enough people, and I knew I'd seen enough. It goes back to that storytelling thing that I always just wanted to do. I just wanted to tell people stories. And I felt like I was meeting people on a regular basis and finding out about stories that I just wanted to tell. But working in broadcast television, I didn't have the platform to be able to tell them, because the commissioning process, oh my God, if you have an idea, you have the idea, sounded really cockney then, you have the idea, you develop it, you pitch it, you go through meetings, it's decisions. It can take months and months and months and months. And I think this was around kind of COVID time. We were still kind of in lockdown. And I think, well, by the time someone decides that that's a good idea, we're going to be 6-9 months down the line, and they would have missed it. And so I sort of felt like, well, I'm just going to film it now. So I've got it because it's happening now. And then I'll work out what I can do with it later. Because if I wait for someone else to tell me, yes, go film it, I'll be waiting forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was just kind of that sense of urgency, and the way the world was going, of things needing to happen a lot quicker than they traditionally happen in broadcast, felt like, hang on, this is thing. And it was that combined with, I did a series for Instagram with Tom Kerridge and Marcus Rashford, the footballer. So it was just around COVID time, and basically it was funded by Instagram. So rather than the BBC going, here's a pot of money, make a programme, we'll put it on the BBC, it was actually Instagram going, here's a pot of money, make some films, and we'll put it on our platform.
Right.
This was kind of new. It was kind of like, what? What do you
With,
mean?
with
Okay.
almost no kind of boundaries and no kind of, well, I mean,
Well, I mean,
obviously
yeah,
around the subject matter, yes, but
yeah, so there was, I mean, this was when Marcus was doing a lot of his campaigning around food poverty and school meals and all of that kind of stuff. So there was an idea, a lot of the stuff that I wasn't involved with, and it was through a production company that I've worked with a lot. But the premise was 52 recipes that were cheap and easy to cook for people that had no money and didn't know how to cook. Marcus can't cook or couldn't cook. So the idea was that Tom would, by doing these recipes, Tom was helping Marcus learn to cook as well as all these school children and whatever. So it was a campaign called Full Time Meals, and we filmed 52 recipes that were sort of short films, 2-3 minutes, that would then get posted on Tom's Instagram and the campaign channel and stuff throughout the year. And we went and did the shoot, and we had so many conversations. It's funny when I think about it now because I do this every day. It's so normal to me now. But we had so many conversations with my good friends who like camera operators and the executive producers of like, how do we go from filming it landscape to it's then got to be portrait? Because we'd have all these meetings with Instagram going, well, it needs to be vertical, it can't be landscape. And we'd go, well, all our cameras film landscape. So how do we make it vertical, and kind of that shift into a different platform that wasn't broadcast,
yeah.
that was really interesting. And then the fact that it was like the recipes are shorter. So in a BBC cook and chop and chat, a recipe is normally about 7 or 8 minutes long. That's kind of how long you give to a recipe. But we were getting recipes into 2 minutes. And so we were having to shift and go, okay, well, how do we can't take the time to explain a recipe. It's all of a sudden, it was the first time as a team we'd made anything for a digital platform and gone, okay, it's got to be shorter, it's got to be vertical, not landscape, and it's got to be way more engaging and way more quick than we would do if it was BBC. And then once we kind of got into this, we just had such a great time. Tom had the best time because we were like, we could chat to each other. It was like, he was chatting to the crew. We were there. There were no rules. It was almost like we'd gone, okay, everything we've known in our TV careers, rip it up, throw it out the window, and then just make some cool films that people are going to watch, because we wanted kids to watch them and them to be used in schools. So like engaging a much younger audience. And then it just felt so freeing of like, oh, we don't have to make content that's an hour long for a TV channel that takes 6 months to make. We were doing 6 recipes a day over 2 weeks. We then did 2 versions of each film. So we had 104 films in the end, in the same time that it would take us to make 2 episodes or whatever. And I just something twigged in my brain that I thought, no, this is actually quite an interesting, because if we've done it for this, there must be loads of things we could do. And it was kind of at the time where Instagram and Facebook and everything were a thing, but I feel like this was a couple of years ago and they've become so much more of a thing now. But like, it sort of made me go, oh, digital, there is a place for video online that's very different to TV. And I found it, my impatience and my sense of urgency, I kind of then sort of, how I was feeling about working in the industry and then doing that job, it kind of like merged together and made me think, well, maybe there's a different way to do it. And that's kind of what started it, really.
Right. And how long ago was this?
So we did that campaign about 3 years ago, I think.
Right. Oh, you said through COVID, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that, and then I went and did another series of Great British Menu, which was the Christmas series where they brought back loads of winners. And then we sort of filmed in the studio, but then we had to do the banquet, and I had to plan 2 banquets. One was the banquet if we could do it in a banquet hall, and one was, what if we can't do it in a banquet hall? How are we going to do the banquet? Because at the time, it was the rules were changing so much, and we didn't know. And then we ended up doing like a boxed banquet, and it was great. But I sort of, that was the kind of show that not through it being the show that it is, but sort of then pushed me over the edge and sort of made me think maybe I can't do TV anymore, because I just sort of felt like I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do. So I sort of just threw caution to the wind and thought, okay, maybe I won't do it anymore then. That's
Right.
just kind of what happened. So that was the last proper TV show that I did, and then I sort of started doing my own thing. I sort of kind of just bought a camera, spent some savings, and just started filming things that I thought were interesting, and then it just kind of snowballed from there, really. And that was it.
Yeah. So, how did you come across Claire? Where did
Aussie.
that connection? Yeah, where did that connection come from?
So Claire was introduced to me by a chef that I was working with at the time. She'd seen some films that I had made for someone on social media, and had asked for my contact details because this Claire was starting the Choose Hospitality campaign. So she needed someone to make the films for Choose Hospitality. So we had been put in touch by a mutual friend at the time, and she was like, right, I've got this idea for this campaign. It's about getting people to take hospitality seriously as a career. It's called Choose Hospitality. I need some films. Can you do it? And I just said, yeah, sure. Okay, cool. And then so I went and filmed all these chefs doing, we did 3 films, one was started by Tom Kerridge and finished by Gordon Ramsay. And then there was loads of chefs in between talking about why you should choose hospitality. And that's what she wanted to launch the campaign. So I drove all around the country and filmed all these chefs. But what was great is it was chefs that I had known from my TV career. So when I had to go film Tom, I knew Tom already. Lisa Goodwin Allen I'd met on Great British Menu. What worked for me about kind of doing this sort of this shift is I sort of knew all the chefs already, because I'd done it in like Telly World. So like Paul Ainsworth I knew from, I did a Christmas cooking show with him and then a couple of Great British Menus. So I was rocking up to meet all these people filming this campaign. They saw me kind of with a camera and were like, oh, you're doing your own thing now. And it's like, oh yeah, cool. And then so it just felt natural. It felt like it was the right thing to do. And it's a campaign that I'm super proud of. And also I want to do more with it. I think it's just the start of something. So yeah, it was because of the Choose Hospitality campaign that me and Claire became bosom buddies, I guess. Now we don't go anywhere without each other.
Well, and that's how we met, through obviously another thing that comes out of the brain of Claire, and and here we are. And that's I mean, HRC was just an amazing experience for me. Like I will not forget that forever.
What
And
made
also,
it?
well, just,
Why was it so great for you?
The people that I met primarily, and the conversations that I was able to have with people. But then I think I'd sent a post out on the back of doing it. And one of the major things for me was, without question, the team that Claire had put together to make that happen. And everybody kind of just gave a shit, and everybody kind of got why we were there. And everybody was just focused on making it as good as it could possibly be. And it was just a joy from start to, apart from the Monday morning when I was shitting my pants. But
once we had started, I think Claire is one of those people that what I'm learning as I get older is actually how important it is to choose the people that you put your energy into. And what I love about hospitality and what I've loved about TV in my career is the variety of people that you meet, and you're always meeting different people. And my boyfriend thinks it's really funny because there are so many people that have come into my life over my career where at the time I was so close with them because I was working on a job with them, we were making a TV show, and you think, right, we're going to be friends forever. And then you go on and you do something else, and then you're just constantly meeting people come into your life. And I think that I have this bit of belief that not everyone is meant to be in your life forever. I think everyone is chapters of your life. And there are certain people that stay for a few chapters and certain people that just only dive in for one. And I think there's not a reason why everyone should always be in your life forever. And that's what kind of makes it dynamic, is when you find there are certain people that you just want to grip onto because you believe in the same thing, you get on the same, and you want to achieve the same goals and you have the same beliefs. But it might only be at that time. Like right now, me and Claire do a lot of projects together, and every time she calls me and says, I've got an idea, I just go, yes, just tell me where
Yeah.
I need to be and
Yeah.
when, because I trust her to do it. We might not be friends forever. I hope that we are. But right now, in my career and in what we're trying to do in the industry and how we're working together, we're very prominent in people's lives. But not everybody is like that all the time. I like that I have people that come in and go out. So I don't really know where I'm going with this, but I think it's what's great about hospitality and TV and media is just the variety of people. And I think you never know who you're going to meet, what they're going to say, and where they're going to take you. I think everyone has an impact on you, and it can change things for the better, or it can shift you in one way or another. And I think you just got to roll with it and just go, okay, who am I meeting today? And there's been so many times where I've started the week thinking it's going to go a certain way. I've done something and then I've ended up doing something totally different. And you just roll with it. I think it's
Yeah.
don't try and change it. Anyway, I went off on a tangent again, but yes,
You
there's
don't
certain
do that, do
people.
you?
It's so bad. I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm really sorry.
No, but you talk with passion, and that's an idea. You're one of these people, I think, whereby something pops into your head and you go, "Ah, wow, yeah, bang, that
Yeah,
makes
which is
sense."
terrible. This is why normally I'm the one asking the questions and not answering them because I just ramble too much. Whereas I'm a
Have you
much
come out
better
in cold
listener.
sweat as we've been talking about
Yeah, I
this?
don't.
You're like you
One
want
of
to.
my things my friends will always say is I'm constantly playing with my hair. Like that's my like nervous reaction. It's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna keep playing with my hair until I shut up, basically.
Yeah, I appeared on somebody else's podcast fairly recently, and all the way through when I was talking, I do this a lot. Like I touch my face a lot as if to.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Some psychologist out there can probably tell me, but
Mm.
yeah, we all
Yeah,
have our little things.
there is, and it's the touch and face. There's a chef I'm working with at the moment that I'm filming. Every time I turn the camera on, he touches his face, and I'm
Really?
like, "You've got to stop." I don't know what it is. It's like a reaction. It's like as soon as like I press record and go, he starts his sentence by touching his face, and it wasn't something that I noticed until I was sitting in the edit, and I was like, "Okay, this is a thing." So there must be some sort of psychology in like you're getting ready. I don't know, but it's
Yeah.
a thing.
No, indeed. So, from your career so far, do you have any funny stories that you can share with us?
I don't know. Do you know what? I'm sure there are, but I just forget them, which is terrible, isn't it? Like I know I've laughed a lot, and there have been a lot of times where things have happened, but now that you ask me, I genuinely can't think of what's funny. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those really things where
Yeah,
you
yeah,
people go, "Oh, tell me a joke," and I'm like, I don't know a
yeah.
joke. But that probably, yeah. I don't like this question because what's fun? I find things funny that other people don't find funny. Like I'm a real
Oh,
dad joke laugher. I'm the only
right.
one that laughs at my father-in-law's jokes. I'm the only one that gets it. Everybody else just rolls their eyes, and I'm hysterical because I just think the simplest things are funny.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's all right. We can park that because it's also one of those things. This is kind of the industry is just a laugh a minute generally, and there's
yeah,
so many things that just pass you by in the moment, but that you don't really contemplate
no,
until you look back on it 20 years later and go, do you know what? That was bizarre, funny, weird, quirky, all of these
yeah.
things.
I'm sure there are like I mean that's the thing is I think the reason that this is me analysing now. The reason I can't think of one is because there have been so many. I
Yeah.
think for all I feel like in my career there's been many ups and downs. There's been a lot of tears, there's been a lot of stress, but there's also been a lot of laughs. I mean, I can just think of one. Okay, I'll tell you this story. There's one day where I was filming with the Hairy Bikers in Fleet Services, which is
As you
very
do.
glamorous,
Yeah. Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
do. And it was the hottest day of the year. Like, it was so hot. And they were doing a cook for peri peri chicken in the car park of Fleet Services, as you do. So they'd set up the motorbike, table across the thing, and they were making peri peri chicken. And obviously, they're melting. It was like leathers, whatever. They were just super hot. And there was a bit of a drama. I had a bit of, because I'd sort of got them a hotel room. Anyway, we ended up having a bit of a massive argument. And then 5 minutes later, we had to do, there was also this part of like these skits, which was part of the series, which was all about chicken and eggs. And the Hairy Bikers are great. I love them. I've had a lot of time with them and they've got a sense of humour. And the director said to me, right, we need you to dress up as a drive-through burger assistant and we're going to take over the Starbucks coffee drive-through, make it look like it's like a burger, In-N-Out burger, and the guys are going to pull up and order a burger. So I was like, okay, fine. I was fuming
Whatever.
because I was angry. It was the hottest day. I was like, fine, I just want to get to the end of this shoot. I just want it to be over. I literally had like, and he was like, oh, and I want you to look, different. I was like, right, okay. So I was like, bright yellow baseball cap, back brushed my hair, ponytail, massive gold earrings, loads of eyeliner, loads of lip gloss, orange tabard. And I was like, right, I'm in. So I'm standing in the window of the drive-through, camera film like ready. I'm like, the guys are going to drive through, and they drive through, and one's dressed up as a chicken and one's dressed up as an egg, like full on costume. And then they order, and I'm like, how am I meant to keep a straight face? And look at me, look where and it was one of those moments where I was like, when I tell this story years later, it's like, why were you doing that? You were in fleet services, it's the hottest day of the year, you're dressed up as a burger assistant, and the hairy bikers are driving through the drive-through dressed as a hairy chicken and a giant egg. Can we just go with that that's your normal day at work? I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
And it's just weird, isn't it? And I just remember thinking, this is why I do what I do, because why else would you do that? I mean, obviously there's been much more glamorous things than that, but yeah, sometimes you're only in fleet services and the weirdest things can happen. So
the things you do for your craft, eh? Do you know the hairy bikers are responsible for one of my all-time favorite lines of any TV show that I've ever watched in my entire life. Now that's a setup, right? I think they were on it was their Asian tour that they were doing, and they were in Hong Kong, and they were up on a mountain, I think attempting to make their own sushi. And there wasn't an ingredient to hand or something like that. And I can't even remember which one of them said it, but they said, oh, this wouldn't happen to Rick Stein, would it? And I just remember thinking to myself, that's just an absolute comedy genius in the moment.
The hairy bikers are just brilliant. And also they are absolutely responsible for their own success. Do you know how they started?
No.
Do you know much about their background? So I can't remember which way around it is. Dave was a makeup artist and Sai was a location scout. So they worked in the industry as members of the production team, and they had this idea to drive around on their motorbikes around Britain and go and visit all these food producers. And so they wrote it up and they made it happen themselves. And then that was the first thing that they did. And they did all the research themselves. They found all of the producers. They almost like wrote the script, did everything. And then that was obviously their first series. And then I think they've made something crazy like 40 TV series now. I mean, it's mad how many they've done. Yeah. But they started the other side of the camera. They were members of the production team, which I just love because they got it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? They're very informed, therefore, when it comes to what do we actually need to cover off here as a TV show. What are we going to have to make sure that we cover? And they've already got the experience on how to go and do all of that. So there you're kind of cementing the argument you made earlier on around actually just learn your craft, as well as you can learn it before you move on to the next thing, because it can kind of just pay dividends at that moment.
Absolutely. And I think that is kind of one of the fundamental reasons why they've been so successful, because they really understood program making and what was interesting and what was needed. They weren't just, we want to be a celebrity, put a camera in front of our face, we're going to cook and be funny. They genuinely did all the background work before they got to that point. And I think that's why we had some heated moments, everybody does, but they were a total joy to work with. And they just genuinely loved doing what they did. And it, like when we were in America, even like another super hot day and everyone's like dying, they're still managing to crack a joke, and then it's a total joy. So I some of my favorite times in my career have been with the hairy bikers. I've loved working with them. I think they're great.
Yeah, well, that's what you need when everybody's sweating their bits off, isn't it? You need a bit of humour in that moment.
Yeah, even in fleet services off the M4 or wherever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. What three reasons would you give to somebody who was contemplating a career in hospitality? Why should they come and work in hospitality?
The three I would say are my absolute fundamental thing in life is just the people. Like, when else you do not know who you're going to meet and when you're going to meet them, and you're not just going to meet people in the industry. You Hospitality is a gateway to the world. Like, you meet so many people in so many different industries and so many different walks of life because hospitality applies to everybody. And it is, if you want to see the world and meet different people from different backgrounds and different cultures and different experiences and life perspectives and opinions, work in hospitality, because that is where everybody eats, everybody drinks, everybody needs to like sustain themselves. So it is the one thing that is fundamental through everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, hospitality is relevant to you. So I think if you're people and interested in stories, there is no other job or industry that you should work in, because when else would you? The echo chamber doesn't exist in hospitality, I don't think. Yes, there's people within hospitality who understand hospitality, but it's always so much broader than that. There are always so many different people involved. I mean, like me, I'm not a chef, I don't run a restaurant, but I'm still kind of connected to the industry. So the people is definitely number one. The places is number two, because I've been all over the world and ended up in all walks of places because of working in hospitality and food and filming food, from fleet services to the other side of the world. So I think it's in terms of traveling and seeing the world, but also in this country. I mean, so many times now I pull up to a Premier Inn and I'm like, I have definitely stayed in this Premier Inn before. I absolutely cannot remember why. Or I will walk into a cafe or a restaurant and I'll go, I've been here before because I've filmed here. Like, I sort of feel like now I've sort of covered the country.
Yeah.
But there is there is every nook and cranny it will take you, and it's all connected. So I just think it's the best way to see things and places,
Yeah.
because I won't go on holiday without planning where I'm going to eat. And that is kind of, that dictates where I'm going to go on holiday, because I want to see nice restaurants. And then that means I meet people. So the places are the other thing. And then also variety and not knowing. I just think there are some people that are happy and want to know what they're doing all the time. I think that's absolutely fine. I want to have like things marked out for them, and 9 to 5, and know what they're doing and can plan, have a 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan. I'm not one of those people. And I think if you're not, hospitality just provides so many opportunities to absolutely mix it up. You can just never get bored. Like, you will never know. If I look back sort of 2, 3 years and everything that's happened to me in that time, if we'd have had this conversation 5 years ago, there's absolutely no way I would have predicted I've done all the things that I've done.
Yeah.
And it's because it's just so unpredictable. And I think once you accept the unpredictability and you don't try and fight it and you just roll with it, and I think it applies to hospitality and media and television as well, then you can just enjoy the ride. Like, literally, you don't know. Like, I had a phone call about something yesterday that I'm now filming next Wednesday, which is top secret. I can't tell you, but literally, I wouldn't have, like, it's come out of the blue. I'm now filming it on Wednesday. It's really cool. And I'm like, it's literally, I just got a phone call yesterday. I didn't know about it, and it's only next week. And I just love that, because when I woke up yesterday morning, I wasn't doing anything interesting
Yeah.
on Wednesday next week.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing something really cool. And I just love I get such a buzz from things happening that I didn't know were going to happen.
Mm.
And that's why hospitality is great, because it's constantly like that, which is one of the reasons why probably people find it frustrating. But I actually think it's a bloody cool thing that you just never know what's going to happen. We didn't
Yeah.
know we would be having this conversation, Phil, did we?
No,
So
what,
there you
three
go.
weeks ago? I didn't
Yeah,
even know you. So, yeah, and didn't
yeah,
even contemplate the fact that actually doing film production and the like would have, is a career arm of this industry.
yeah. I think it absolutely is. And if anything, it's becoming more more important. I'll try not to go on a rant about it because I don't know if it's something you're going to ask me, but I
You
do
can
think
that'll
it.
be like a bookend then, because you ranted at the beginning. We can finish it with a rant.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when you were like, is there certain things you want to talk about? And it is kind of like, I think the way that Instagram and social media platforms have changed the industry is really interesting. I think I have a love-hate relationship with social media because I've built a business on social media content. That is what I do. I make things for Instagram mostly. So of course it's given me these opportunities, but then at the same time it has diluted the industry a little bit because I think it's people feel like because everybody else is doing it, they need to do it too. So it's almost like you're scrolling and you're seeing photos and videos that are very similar, and it's all food and it's all restaurants because that's kind of what everyone's doing. But actually, there's no kind of separation. I think people are too scared to be authentic in themselves because it's kind of on Instagram. You know, that whole filter thing of like what's actually happening behind the scenes. I think there's a question of how much do you really need to do and how you should be doing it and what's right. And I think everyone has a camera and everyone can take things and take photos and videos and stuff. So, and that's how customers find restaurants. If people want to go out for dinner, they go to places that they've seen on Instagram. And it's a constant conversation I'm having with myself because I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, really. I think it opens things up to be discovered in a way that you wouldn't perhaps be discovered. I mean, you're not in like necessarily in a list or on a guide, but someone's seen something cool on Instagram, so they want to come to your restaurant. I think that's really cool. But then at the same time, it creates this pressure that you've got to have a presence on these social media platforms. But then because you've got to have a presence, you feel like you're making content for content's sake because you've got to
Yeah.
have photos or you've got to have videos. And it's like you shouldn't just make videos because you know you need videos. You have to have a reason. And a lot of what we do is it's like films with purpose because, yes, tell a story, but don't just make something or post something just because you've got to do 3 posts that week because that's what your marketers have told you you've got to do and you've got to have like this presence because then it just becomes a catalogue of
Yeah.
stuff that just doesn't feel like it's the same. And I think we're in a bit of a dangerous territory where it's gone great. It's opened up this whole world to job roles. Like look at people like Poppy Cooks and people that have created jobs in the industry solely through social media platforms, which is great.
Potatoes.
And potatoes. Oh my god, I did one of her recipes for potatoes at Christmas. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so which is great. And so we've kind of had that peak, but then I do think we're in danger of sterilizing the industry a little bit because everyone's kind of trying to do the same thing. So
I hear
it
you.
it worries me slightly.
And I guess there's also the risk, and maybe we're overthinking this. I don't know, but there's maybe the risk to the business that you have, as you say, you've catalogued all of your experiences for people to go and visually see on your profile page. What are you leaving them with left to explore? Other
Mm,
than the
mm,
flavor and all of that sort of stuff, you've got to. I suppose you need a little bit of mystique, I think, as
mm,
well, as to
mm.
why somebody should come and experience what you've got to offer. And I get it. I get it. It's a really great shop window to say, look, if you come here, you're going to get this wonderful theatre of a dish that we've curated over 6 years of development or whatever, and that's great. But yeah, do you run the risk of the experience being diluted because they've already semi-experienced it? I don't know.
And
As I
also
say, maybe just
they've
overthinking.
seen they've seen the dishes as well because they've seen it, and so when it's put in front of them, it's not a oh my god, I didn't know what this was going to look like because I saw it on
Mm,
Instagram 2 days ago, before I was coming. And but also it's that thing of I had the experience recently where I went to a restaurant that everyone was talking about. I'd seen it loads on social media, everyone saying how great it was, and I went and I feel like I actually was a bit disappointed because I'd already subconsciously created a preconception about what my experience was going to be because of the things I'd seen about it. And then actually it kind of let me down. Whereas if I hadn't have seen any of that or hadn't have heard any of that, just by going, I would have had a different experience maybe. In the same way
yeah.
that sort of when you earn a Michelin star, you then kind of create this level of expectation of everyone coming expects a certain thing. I think there is the same thing of how you present yourself on social media then creates an expectation from the customers. And actually, I think I'm sort of trying to get some of my clients and friends to actually just be honest and authentic, and actually just don't worry so much about being a brand. This is everything we offer. Actually, just be a person and just be yourself and talk about you and what you're doing. I've got a friend slash client who I'm working with at the moment, and on their restaurant Instagram, before I sort of started working with him, I was like, "Where are you? You're not on any of this." There was no pictures, there was no videos of him, there was nothing, and it was his restaurant. And I was kind of like, well, where are you? I'm just looking at like adverts or photos of the food, which is kind of fine. But actually, if you want people to come because they want to know who's behind it and what you're doing. And actually sort of, we started doing this thing where I'm like, do you know what, just film what you're doing. He's had all this amazing stuff going on behind the restaurant. He'd be out digging or growing things or planting things or whatever. And I'm like, well, just film it on your phone, selfie mode, and just talk through what you're doing, and let's just post it on Instagram and just see what happens. And all of a sudden everyone went nuts because it was like, oh my God, I didn't realise this was happening, or I've never heard you speak or heard you talk about your restaurant or what you're doing, and now I'm really interested in what you're doing. And it's not because he's putting photos of the food and this is our menu and this is what we do. He's just actually talking about day to day what's going on in the restaurant and what he's doing and what's happening behind the scenes. And it kind of switched everyone was kind of all of a sudden so much more engaged with it. And he's like, oh, it's cringy. And I'm like, it's not, because people want to know, like, people want to know. It's not enough anymore, I think, to just go, this is who we are as a brand, and you won't see what's behind the scenes. Everyone, you want to see what's behind the scenes. Can I just tell you this story quickly, because it's one of my favourites, and then I'll shut up. It's just made me remember. I was putting this kind of what people, because there used to be a point where no one would see the kitchen. Do you remember? Like, kitchens weren't exposed. It was behind a door. Customers and guests never went in the kitchen or never saw the kitchen. You would never have photos or videos in the kitchen. It was kind of like secret and hidden. Yeah. Whereas now kind of open kitchens are a thing. I can't remember what I was doing or why I was there. I was in London and I went to an Italian restaurant by myself once a couple of years ago. And it was this old guy who ran it, and he came over and chatted to me, and he was telling me the story about his restaurant and how he started. And he said in the 70s, he started his restaurant. So it's like an Italian restaurant, and it was like behind like a stud wall was the kitchen, and there was like one of those swing doors, and he'd say the restaurant would be full, and there'd all this noise coming from the kitchen, because that's just what the environment of kitchens used to sound like. And he'd go through and like talk to the kitchen team and say, oh, service, whatever, and then come back out, and everyone just thought it was a really busy, wonderful restaurant. And actually what they didn't know is there wasn't a kitchen behind the wall. There was just a couple of microwaves. He was playing some kitchen noises on a stereo and just putting things in and out the microwave. And everyone was coming to the restaurant. And he was like, I don't know how I got away with it for so long, but that's how we started the restaurant. I was like, isn't that the most amazing thing? Of just people would just, because in the day nobody cared. I guess my point of telling that story is, gone are the days where people didn't care. They turned a blind. No one ever questioned it. No one ever asked him how he cooked the food, where the food come from, who the team were. No one used to care about that stuff. So restaurants would just cook great food, people would come and eat it, and that was it. Whereas nowadays, you've got to show everything, because people want to know everything. And I think the more you bear, the better, because it just only goes to show that you're authentic and honest and your true self. And that is what people buy into. People don't want to feel like they're being sold something or it's an advert or whatever. I think you've just got to go full skinny dipping or don't go swimming at all. Does that make sense?
Great illusion. Well, that's definitely making the intro. That line for sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. That was quite good, though, wasn't it?
That is good. Yeah, it's a good way to summarise for sure. Yeah, we'll take that. Wicked. Look, I am eminently conscious of time.
I'm sorry. I don't even know if we talked about the things that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm very happy with everything. There's a career journey in there. There's some stories. There's, we've highlighted another arm to the industry that people can come and get involved with. The last question to you is that if people want to learn about your business, you in a bit more detail, or anything that we've talked about today, what's the best method for them to contact you to do so?
this goes so against what I've just said, but Instagram
Social media
is the best at social media. So we're at 750 Films on Instagram, or our website 750.co.uk. So you can kind of track us and see us through that, really. Against everything that I've just said about social. This is the battle I have every day. Like, I hate social media, but it's also my job, so I need to love it.
But I think a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with social media. Like I go through phases with it as well. Like my thing at the moment with social media is that I'm actually only using videos or reels to go and seek out comedy. I will just scroll past anything that doesn't make me laugh. And actually from that purpose, it serves a massive, like, one of the biggest things for me is to keep myself in a laughing state. Like that's where I am happiest. So,
and I think, it's true. And it's one of the things that I've learned recently is actually you can change your feed of like what you're scrolling through. Like, you don't have to scroll for everything. Like, if certain things are making you feel sad or unhappy or uneasy or anxious, don't follow that. I did a thing lately where I'm big into my cycling. That's kind of what I do outside of work world. And so I just filled my feed and started following all these professional female cyclists and all the competitions and stuff. So now all I'm looking at is like girls on bikes doing really cool stuff. And I'm like, that's what I want from my personal Instagram, because that's what makes me feel happy. I think you can switch off the things that you don't want to look at. You don't have to look at everything, and you are in control of your library. Like, you can change the books on the shelf that you're reading at any time. So you can do that with people who follow on Instagram. I think it's good for everybody to have a clear out every now and then. A cleanse of just going, actually, this person, is it making me feel like jealous or anxious, or am I not really sure what I'm getting from this person or this company? So I'm just going to unfollow. There's no shame in unfollowing. You can do it.
Absolutely.
Be strong.
But don't unfollow this show. Though,
no, exactly. No, absolutely don't do that. Don't do that at all. That's not what I meant. But oh my God.
Wicked. Look, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been an absolute joy to get to know you over the last few weeks. I'm hoping that we'll be doing more together at some point down the line.
Thank you so much.
Sounds like we might be.
Well, we've got a lunch booked in, haven't we, Phil?
We do. So let's see where that goes.
Next time maybe I just won't talk so much, because I just feel like this is
you be
not
you.
Good.
Don't ever change.
Don't think, just do. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
It was lovely to speak to you. Thanks for having me on. I've loved it.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Rosa.
Take it easy.
Bye. And there we have it. Another epic journey, and hopefully this highlights to you all another incredibly interesting career path you can take. A huge thank you to Rosa for bringing the thunder. We'll be back as usual at 8 PM next Wednesday for another story from hospitality. So until then, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.